In Shakespeare's Tempest, we meet Prospero. Duke by day, wizard by night.
Wizard, like Dumbledore?
Kinda.
Or Gandalf?
Well,
Or Chris Angel?
you're getting colder.
Oh.
Prospero was the rightful Duke of Milan,
You shall not pass!
when he was usurped by his wicked brother Antonio,
I'm evil.
with the help of the King of Naples, Alonso. Prospero and his daughter were then put to sea, where they ended up isolated on a magical island for many years.
Now, after creating a wild tempest at sea, with help from his magical servant spirit, Ariel, Prospero finds himself at odds with his daughter, Miranda, who, distraught by the shipwreck the Tempest has created, demands her father to explain the dark magic that she has witnessed.
Hi everyone, welcome to our last installment of our interactive table work. Today we're doing one of my favorite pieces, which is The Tempest. Before we get started and jump into the text, I'd like to introduce our cast of characters.
I'm Annabelle Dixon, playing Sebastian.
I'm Blake Johnson, playing Antonio.
Kevin Brown, Prospero.
Sarah Verdeso, I'm playing Miranda.
Michael Kennedy, and I'm playing Ferdinand.
We're going to read through it first. Now I encourage you in your class or at home to open up your own version of this. You might notice that there's a few differences, a few cuts in the text, but that's okay. Sometimes when you're working on a piece at a Shakespeare festival or at any kind of theater, the director or the dramaturg is going to go through the script and they may cut a few things that's going to be specific for their production. So, you all ready to get started? Great. So this is Act 1, Scene 2. You've already heard a little bit of an introduction. Right here you're going to see just a little bit of conflict between a father and daughter as the tempest rolls over the ocean and Miranda asks her father for help.
If by your art, my dearest father, you have put the wild waters in this roar, allay them, the sky, it seems, would pour down some stinking pitch, but that the sea, mounting to the welkin's cheek, dashes the fire out. Oh, I have suffered with those I saw suffer. A brave vessel who had no doubt some noble creature in her, dashed all to pieces. Oh, the cry did knock against my very heart. Poor souls, they perished.
Be collected. No more amazement. Tell your piteous heart there's no harm done.
Oh, woe the day!
No harm. I have done nothing but in care of thee. Of thee, my dear one, thee, my daughter, who art ignorant of what thou art, not knowing of whence I am, nor that I am more better than Prospero, master of a full poor cell, and thy no greater father.
More to know. Did never meddle with my thoughts.
'Tis time I should inform thee farther. Lend thy hand and pluck my magic arm from me. So, lie there, my heart. Wipe thou thine eyes. Have comfort. The direful spectacle of the wreck, which touched the very virtue of compassion in me, I have with such provision in my heart, so safely ordered that there is no soul, no, not so much perdition as a hair, betid to any creature in the vessel. In the vessel, betid to any creature in the vessel, which thou heardst cry, which thou sawest sing. Sit down, for thou must now know farther.
Great, great, thank you, thank you, thank you. So, the first thing that I want to ask you that we've talked about in some of our previous videos is, what's going on here? What are the given circumstances? And how do we define given circumstances?
Would you like to go, Kevin?
Well, which question do you want to add?
Let's answer, how do we define given circumstances?
These are the facts. The given circumstances are the facts of where everybody is, when, and then going further, what the relationship is, what she wants from me, what I want from her, what we're trying to do.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's a great explanation. So we've got relationship, and I think that idea of here's the facts, here's the things that are setting up the scene. Michael, anybody, what's another given circumstance that you could name right now? Setting?
Time period.
Time period? Great. What else?
Previous action before the play has started or before the scene that we're in.
Great. So we're getting a lot of that here in the opening bit. We know that there's been a tempest, we know that there's been a shipwreck at sea, and we know that there's a relationship between a father and a daughter. Great. So Sarah, my first question, why all these words? If by your art, dearest father, why do you have to keep going? Why don't you just say, someone reading this or hearing this for the first time might just say, why didn't she just say stop?
Miranda uses all of this spoken decor, which is spoken language used to describe the setting around them or things that they have witnessed. So Miranda is describing the horrors of the wreckage that she saw in order to demand from her father for him to stop. Because she knows it's him. She knows it's him. So she comes to him. And even describing in such descriptive detail also gives urgency to the character. The particular verbs that she uses, or the particular words that she uses, my apologies, roar, mounting the welkin's cheek, dashes the fire out, stinking pitch. She doesn't have to say all that, but she does to relay the importance of what has just happened and the grandiose and the horror of this situation.
Great. So we're using imagery, we're using these descriptive words, and it's there to ignite our imagination. And why do we think imagination is so important to an Elizabethan audience? We've talked about this a little bit the other day, Kevin. Why do we have to? What's another reason we may have to use these words in context of Shakespeare's time?
Well, in Shakespeare's time, there was no scenery and no lighting. The performances took place on a bare stage. Beautiful background, probably, against the tiring house and those lovely pillars. And so, and the performances took place in the middle of the afternoon, lit by the sun. And so, there was no way to do scenery except like this. And as Shakespeare says in through the opener of Henry V, on our imaginary forces work. Imagine that this is someplace else. And in every single play, that someplace else is enormously described by words.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. When we look at this stuff, many times when Shakespearean audiences came to see a show, even in the text we hear characters talk about, we're going to hear a play, that people were really listening because that was the spark. The language was the spark. The imagery was the spark from which our imaginations would begin to fire. That's great. Miranda, let's go back into this. And you've already talked about what you want from your father, which we've talked about in previous times as our objective, what we want from our scene partner. So if you were going to give me just kind of essentially what you're doing here, what are you saying to your father?
So I am saying to him, stop, you're causing so much grief.
Mm-hmm.
This really hurts me.
Right. But does he stop?
It takes a few different tactics before, and he doesn't actually stop. He
Right.
doesn't actually stop the tempest at all. He just tells her more of the reasoning why the tempest is happening.
Right. And so, like you said, you have to use a lot of tactics in order to get him to to pay attention to you. You say, allay the waters that are in a roar, the sky's pouring down. I've suffered. Oh, poor souls, they perish. Dad, stop. It's knocking against my heart. You're trying all these things. You're demanding, you're cajoling, you're trying to guilt him. And so we have to use all this language because the situation isn't changing. Let's go through it again, and I want to see what happens if we really work each tactic here with Dad. Check in with Dad to see if it's working on each end stop. Breathe it in and then push forward once more.
If by your art, my dearest father, you have put the wild waters in this roar, allay them. The sky, it seems, would pour down some stinking pitch, but that the sea, mounting to the welkin's cheek, dashes the fire out. Oh, I have suffered with those I saw suffer. A brave vessel who had no doubt some noble creature in her, dashed all to pieces. Oh, the cry did knock my very heart, but they perished.
Good, Sarah. And so, Prospero, what's your retort to all of that?
Oh, be quiet. You crazy girl.
Yeah.
But you're also, it's not just it's not really you crazy. It's you wonderful girl. Because,
Yes.
The fact that she can feel these things for people that she's never met. It's kind of something that I don't do very well.
Yeah. And how do we know, and this is a question for everybody, how do we know that Prospero sees his daughter as such a wonderful person, such a caring and empathetic person? When we look at this, at the page here, it's just in black and white, how do we get that?
Well, he says to her, tell your piteous heart there's no harm done. So he knows that she's a very caring person.
Right.
In him.
Piteous heart, he says. I've done nothing but in care of thee, my dear one. So sometimes when you're looking through this, you're going to learn a lot about a character from what other people say. These are part of the clues that make up the rich tapestry of each piece of dramatic literature. Great. Let's keep going then. I would love you to do me a favor here. I heard one of our other teammates yesterday, Chris Fritzkes, say this, and I thought it was a really fun phrase. He says, don't be a nice partner, be a good partner, right? So that means hit the ball really hard so that your teammate can either catch it or hit it back really hard. So Sarah, hit the ball really hard because your dad has to say what? Chill. Make him say that. Oh, the cry did knock against my very heart. Poor souls, they perished. Make him calm you down. And we'll keep going from there.
Oh, the cry did knock against my very heart, poor souls, they perished.
Be collected. No more amazement. Tell your piteous heart there's no harm done.
Oh, woe the day!
No harm.
Good, Sarah. Good, Kevin. Let's do that one more time. And Sarah, what do we have here? If you look at the text, you've got all these kind of half lines and it looks really choppy. Why do we have that, do you think?
So we have a shared line between Prospero and Miranda's and my father and I.
Great.
And this shows an intimacy, so a connection between the two characters.
Right. That's great, Sarah. So Annabelle, basically a shared line means that we finish each other's
Sentences.
Oh, right? So we have a very common modern corollary here. For the rest of our group here, what else does a shared line indicate?
It can indicate conflict, that one person is not allowing the other to fully finish their thought before contradicting them. In this case, Prospero is trying to calm her, and she is outraged on it almost that this is all happening and he's trying to pacify her.
Right.
So she hits him right back. like you say with the baseball bat. You know, Prospero hits it hard and Miranda hits it right back to him.
That's great. Let's try this, and I would love for you to have the idea of a tennis match in your head. Poor souls, they perish. Be collected. He's saying, no harm done. Oh, woe the day. No harm. Right? Great. Let's try that. Same spot. Oh, the cry did knock against my very heart.
Oh, the cry did knock against my very heart. Poor souls, they
Be
perish.
collected. No more amazement. Tell your piteous heart there's no harm done.
Oh, woe the day.
No harm.
Wonderful. Great, great. And so when we start to hear that going back and forth, we've got Shakespeare kind of directing us about the pace of the scene. So Blake, talk to me about pace. If you hear a director say, we need to slow down the pace, or we need to pick up the pace, what does that really mean?
I think it's talking about like the pace of the scene or how quickly it moves. Like Annabelle was talking about shared lines. And one thing I think shared lines do is it brings up the stakes of the scene because it's quick, it's snappy.
Right, right. So sometimes the rapidity with which we speak to one another indicates that the stakes are rising, that the urgency is rising. Even as I'm talking right now, you can tell that I'm getting more agitated, more intense, right? Not to belabor the point, but I think that's what you're getting at. That's fantastic, Blake. So, I'd like to go from be collected, no more amazement, and let's go through the end of the scene here. Or till the next time we stop, rather.
How do you know that it's a shared line? Is it just kind of like indented almost?
How do we know it's a shared line? I think a great example is right here. There's no harm done, oh woe the day, no harm. How do we know that that's a shared line?
Here's one way to know, because usually like Shakespeare is written out like with the iambic pentameter, it's in a line, but you'll know because it'll be like kind of stacked.
Great. So it's almost like stair steps, right? How else do we know? That's great, Blake, by the typography. How else might we know?
With actually checking our iambic pentameter. If it is in verse, seeing if it has the proper 5 stressed and unstressed syllables with the lines together.
That's wonderful, Annabelle. So can you go through this, just as you said?
Yes, so there's no harm done, oh woe the day.
Right.
Oh, wait, one more.
No harm. And that is the perfect 5 iambic pentameter.
Yeah, so we've got 5 iambs, unstressed, stressed, right? There's no harm done, oh woe the day, no harm. So not only does Miranda finish her father's sentence, her father comes back, finishes her sentence, all in the same line. So we really know that the pace is popping, that this shared line is telling us that we've got to move forward, we've got to push through this. Great. So let's go back from be collected, and let's see where this ends up. How this pace, I want you to listen, how is this pace moving up and coming down? Because it's right there in the language.
Poor souls, they perish.
Be collected. No more amazement. Tell your piteous heart there's no harm done.
Oh, woe the day.
No harm. I got nothing but in care of thee, my dear one, thee, my daughter, who art ignorant of what thou art, not knowing of whence I am, nor that I am more better than Prospero, master of a poor cell, and thy no greater father.
More to know. Did never meddle with my thoughts.
'Tis time I should inform thee, father.
Great, great, great. See, what did so Prospero, what happened in this chunk for you in regards to just meaning and pace?
Well, I slowed down
Yeah.
in order to verbally comfort, caress her,
Yes.
calm her.
Yeah. Talk to me, if you don't mind, about this section. I have done nothing but in care of thee, my dear one, thee, my daughter. Before you say, what do we notice there, just from the panel really quick?
It's very tender, the language is.
The language is very tender. What do we continue to hear? Thee, which means you, right? But he's not saying you, he's saying thee. So Kevin, can you talk to me about this section?
I can. If you're asking about the three Th's,
Yes.
We tend to think of thee and thou and those articles as formal because we don't use them anymore. They're in the Bible, which was the King James version was written exactly at this time. So that's a reason that these things sound so biblical. But in their day, thee and thou were less civil, and you was the formal address. That's already being messed with and being, I think, challenged. If you comb these plays for that, you sometimes find anomalies. But it's a more intimate and less formal article than you. And so, if you just listen to the sound of the it's almost a caress. Yeah. What I've got to do is set it up for her. You don't know what's going on. There's some stuff you don't know. Okay? And you want to know you want to know these things. You've been asking me. So I'm going to tell you. So, shh.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. This idea that our language has motivation, intention. We're using it. I love that idea of thee. It almost, of thee, my dear one. No, look at me. Look at me. Of thee. That's really nice. Where would you like to pick it up from to head to the end of the scene?
'Tis time I should inform thee, Father.
Great.
Lend thy hand and pluck my magic garment from me. So. Lie there, my heart. Wipe thou thine eyes, have comfort. The direful spectacle of the wreck, which touched the very virtue of compassion in me, I have, with such provision in mine heart, so safely ordered that there is no soul, no, not so much perdition as a hair, contingent to any creature in the vessel, which thou heardst cry, which thou sawest think. For thou hast now no farther.
Oh, it's just lovely. I just feel like we're about to hear the best story we've ever heard, right? Dad's about to give all the dish. I was a duke and we had to run away. We were on a boat and even the rats had a better life than we did. And oh my God, right? Wonderful, wonderful.
Chad, I wonder why Prospero asks Miranda to help him and take his garment and lay it down right before he talks about something so important. You know, I just wonder what's the purpose of that language here?
Can you all talk to us about the language in this section?
To answer your question, what we have here is embedded stage directions. So down here, Prospero says, "And pluck my magic garment from me," so lays down his mantle. So this is a line that tells that Miranda is to take his cloak, and he puts it down, and then he speaks that there lies his art or his magic, because his cloak is magical. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. And what does Prospero say? Wipe thou thine eyes. So what does that tell us about Miranda? She's been crying. So not only is the language telling us what's happening, it's telling us about the emotional state of the characters.
I would just like to point out that in Shakespeare's time, he didn't necessarily add stage directions in like that all the time.
So it was just more in the language as a way to almost direct the actors when he wasn't there. Great. Fantastic. Well, we finished up our little conflict here at the beginning of the story. We've got it set up between Prospero and Miranda, and now Prospero's about to give us a great story about what happens next.